Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the first in the DMAI 30 Under 30 series. How did I get here? Some career Q&A with tourism pros. My name is Jim McCall with DMAI, and I'm joined by my colleague Mitchell Garish. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started with today's webinar. We will be recording the entire webinar. It will be sent to you in a follow-up email roughly 4 business days from now, so you don't need to worry about taking notes. We are accepting questions throughout the presentation. My colleague Mitchell will be taking your questions and feeding them to our speakers at the end of the presentation. So you can submit questions by using the questions tab on your go-to panel. And with that, I will toss it over to Mitchell Garish.
Thanks, Jim. Well, welcome everybody to today's first webinar. This webinar, like Jim mentioned, is in conjunction with DMAI's 30 Under 30 program. It is a program that offers destination marketers 30 under 30 a scholarship to attend DMAI's premier meeting, the Destination Marketing and Management Forum, formerly DMAI's annual convention. This event is for destination marketing and management professionals, which connects peers and thought leaders from inside and outside the industry. Applications for this year's program will open the first week of March on DMAI's website, or if you have any questions, they can be directed towards me at mitchell@destinationmarketing.org. My email will show up at the end also. Today's webinar will be moderated by 2 industry millennials who have proven they are rising stars in the industry and were named this year's 2015 30 Under 30 ambassadors, acting as mentors to the current program participants. Today's moderators are Kat Kessler, Online Content Manager at the Asheville Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Shanna Smith, Partner Communications Manager at the San Antonio Convention and Visitors Bureau. Kat and Shanna?
Hi everyone, this is Kat Kessler here, and we're going to start off by introducing our experienced professional panelists this morning, or this afternoon rather. Our first panelist is Jeremy Harvey, who is the Vice President of Communications and Marketing with the excellent team over at Visit Savannah. In this position, he oversees the organization's marketing initiatives, which includes destination branding, advertising, digital marketing, public relations, content development, and social media initiatives. He has previously spent 8 years in Virginia with both the Visit Loudoun and the Alexandria Convention and Visitors Association, now known as Visit Alexandria. And he lives in Savannah with his wife, 2 boys, and a new beagle named Daisy Deuce.
Thanks, Kat.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. It's Shanna, and thanks again for joining us. I'm going to be introducing our second panelist, who is Margot Richards out of Austin, Texas. Margot Richards joined the Lower Colorado River Authority in January 2015 as Vice President of Community Resources and directs parks, conservation efforts, the Lower Colorado River Land Trust, tourism, meeting and event planning, and other revenue-generating initiatives. In this role, Richards leads sales, marketing, and advertising campaign efforts to increase brand awareness and visitation to LCRA's 46 parks and various other public-private business ventures. Richards is a seasoned marketing and strategic communication executive whose previous accomplishments include serving as the Texas Department of Transportation's Director of Travel Information Division, and during that time she directed the state's official travel magazine, Texas Highways, and other travel literature including the Texas State Travel Guide and the Texas Official Travel Map. Also while at TxDOT, she oversaw the state's 12 travel information centers and the division's marketing and advertising campaigns, including Don't Mess with Texas, Adopt a Highway, and Drive Clean Texas. Before joining TxDOT in 2012, Richards served as the Director of Tourism at the Austin Convention and Visitors Bureau, and previously she served as the Public Relations Coordinator for the Office of the Governor, Economic Development and Tourism, where she managed international travel trade promotions, organizing media and trade events to market Texas as a premier destination. Richards is a Central Texas native who earned her Bachelor of Science in Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Sciences from Texas A&M University. Welcome, Margot, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Shanna. It's great to hear your voice.
Great. So we're going to get started with our first question for our panelists. Now that you've heard a little bit about their background broadly, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. So Margot, if you want to take this question first, tell us what has been a tipping point in your career. It could be something like a job opening that you didn't see coming, or an aha moment that led to great things later on.
Sure, Kat. For me, there have been two different ones, I think, specific to kind of my career path, but also the industry as a whole. The first one was the job opening that I found out about whenever I started working for the Governor's Office for Economic Development and Tourism, or as many of you know it as Texas Tourism. Whenever I realized what the opportunities were for that specific position and the career paths that you could take into our industry from a position like that, I knew that I had kind of found a niche that I had been looking for from a career point of view. Because prior to really interviewing for the job at Texas Tourism, I wasn't that aware of that many opportunities in our industry. So that was kind of a big aha moment for me. For my second kind of a job opening I didn't see coming, it's more than likely the current job that I have now with the Lower Colorado River Authority. I had been pretty much on a straight path in the travel and tourism industry, and when I was asked to join LCRA in the current role that I'm serving, I'm handling our tourism efforts in parks and the operations of our parks, but I'm also kind of diversifying my skill sets into areas that I really had not previously even thought about getting involved in. So it's allowing me to develop more skills than I've had in the past, which over the course of your career I think is a great opportunity for people to look for advantages to take along that path.
Excellent. Jeremy, what about you?
Thanks, Kat. I would say there's probably been a lot of small tipping points along the way. I think if I think back on some of my previous career at the other DMOs, tipping points happen when I've sort of put myself out there or taken initiative on something or really been passionate about something and leading charge on it. It always seems to be milestones I look back on and think, well, that really worked out well, or that was good experience, even if things weren't always successful. Also, I was lucky to work for bosses that really sort of protected and allowed me to fail at times, and that was very helpful and rewarding in terms of experience. But I would say like a job opening I didn't see coming was probably the current job. I had been working for about 8 years, 16 years altogether up in Northern Virginia tourism, and had the opportunity to put in for this position with Visit Savannah. Looking back, it was sort of like, yeah, this is definitely a place I could see myself going, but it kind of happened very quickly, and I just got a call out of the blue one day about it and thought I should take a chance and see what I can do. You know, working for smaller destinations in my previous two jobs, you know, it was nice to get a shot at getting a destination that was, you know, world renowned, and you know, I took a chance, and here I am.
Great. Also an excellent segue into our next question, which is really, you know, about that exact thing. You know, what is, and Jeremy, if you want to, you know, start, if you have anything else to add on this one, what is your point of view and your experience on taking that risk, taking that leap of faith, leave an organization that you've been with for a while, and go somewhere new? And also, for either of you, anytime you've made a move, sort of when did you know that it was time to move on to the next opportunity?
Sure. I would say, you know, it's always scary to take a leap, especially in this case moving from Virginia to Georgia, whereas my last two positions was, you know, moving about 30 minutes away. It wasn't that big of a change geographically, but you know, I think I knew I wanted to, you know, sort of expand my experience, and you know, doing a lot of things new at the organizations, taking initiative on projects, you know, sort of stepping up was one way to gain experience. But you also can get a lot of experience changing destinations, changing markets, changing strategies. One of the big things that I knew going into this job was was having to go from marketing a destination that wasn't well known in Virginia to marketing one that was known around the world. How do I tackle those challenges? And it really motivates me to try and see how I can achieve those and overcome those challenges. So that's been good. I would say knowing when it was time to move on, I think has been different reasons over the years. I think some of it's been my personal situation, whether it's getting married or having kids, or that all affects priorities. But from a work standpoint, I would say I'm very motivated by a challenge, and I have lots of ideas that I want to implement. But usually it seems to have come to a point where I feel like I've done everything I want to do, that I maybe not being as effective in coming up with new strategies, and that sort of tells me someone else could probably do this better and is probably more motivated. So then I'll start to look for new opportunities. But I think it's hard to fight complacency, and you have to challenge yourself to keep pushing the envelope. And that's something that I think we all struggle with. I do over my career, and you just have to remind yourself why you're in this business and what you love about it and what keeps you going.
Great, thank you. Margot?
Jeremy, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. So many good points there. One of the things, too, that I think a lot of people, whenever they ask this question, when did you know you were ready to move on? Sometimes you may not even know that you're ready, and there's an opportunity that will present itself to you, and it might be one of the hardest decisions to make, but ultimately you know that long-term it's time for you to go. But taking that leap of faith and knowing that it's okay to take a risk, whether you succeed or you fail, is a really good thing to try, because it makes you put yourself out there, and it just makes you test yourself to kind of know what your skills are long term. And from leadership and management points of view, it's good to put yourself out there and just test yourself. As far as, oh goodness, when do you know it's time to move on? I agree with Jeremy in so many of those examples that he shared. You know kind of deep down whenever you start to get complacent with something. And so I always have kind of this feeling, and I've known it always, that like I'll start thinking about, okay, well, what's next? Because I've achieved something and I've been pretty proud of the work that I've done, but I know that I have the ability to do something else, and I know that many of the people listening today do too. So it's really to go out and see how you can continue to grow in your career and be able to challenge yourself.
Great, thank you. Now this is one of the questions that was submitted by one of our 30 under 30 class members, and it's something I've definitely talked with people about before. And I think there's this perception that especially for people who might be currently in smaller markets, this perception that if you want to move up and grow in your career, the only option almost seems to be to relocate, and that can be really challenging for people at this point in their lives and in their careers. And I'm wondering if either of y'all have any advice or perspective on that. And Jeremy, you want to kick that one off?
Sure. I found with my experience, in order to move up or to gain more experience, you have to move on. But I don't think that's always the case. I was lucky to start my destination marketing career in the DC area, which normally in a city generally, or a destination, there's only one destination marketing organization. So if you wanted to move up, especially a smaller organization that doesn't have a lot of turnover, or opportunities, you kind of have to move on. But luckily, I was able to sort of move on in the region I was in. But I've always sort of known that if I wanted to move up to the next level, I would have to move on. Whether it's a bigger destination, bigger budget, or a state tourism office, whatever it is, that would involve a move. And it kind of stinks sometimes, because you kind of get used to where you live, and hopefully it's a nice place and good quality of life, and that's hard to sort of take a risk to say, yeah, I want to move on to a new area, especially like in my case, moving my family down here. Savannah seemed great. I'd never lived here, but you take a chance, and you sort of have to weigh all the options. And I would say sometimes it works out, and sometimes it might not. But you don't know until you try. And I think the experience you gain is always going to be valuable, however you decide to move on or move up, whatever it may be.
Great. How about you, Margot?
Again, I agree with Jeremy and many points that he made. For the different areas that I've worked in, there have been places where, yes, in fact, for me to move up, I had to leave that particular company and move on to another one. There have been other places, though, where I've been that there is potential for growth within that company. But one of the key things that I think people should always know is that they need to be their own kind of cheerleader about their career. And so a lot of times your managers may or may not know if you have ambition to continue to grow in your career and to take on more responsibility and possibly become a manager or a director or VP, whatever it may be. So it's always crucial to let your management team know that you're interested in either staying there or moving on, if the case may be, to continue to grow in your career and take on more responsibility. Because those managers and other people in your office now can help you find something outside of your current CBB or hotel or whatever it may be, because it's such a small industry. And so we all know each other pretty well. And so if you're looking for a communications director position, it's more than likely going to be the case that somebody knows someone that's hiring them. So make sure you just communicate what your goals are.
Awesome. Thank you, Margot. So switching topics just a little bit, here's another question that was submitted from our 30 Under 30 class members. And our 30 Under 30s would like for each of you to share some of your top tips regarding professional networking. So for example, does traditional networking, conversations in a room full of people, come easy to you, or is it more of a chore? And also, do you have any tips for approaching these situations? Margot, would you like to take this one?
Sure. For those of you that may know me, I am not intimidated by a room full of people. So I enjoy networking and talking to people, whether it's in a small room or a large room. Throughout the course of my career, I've been able to really create some great contacts and friendships within the Texas tourism industry. And so it's always a fun experience to go and be with those people. I do think, though, whenever you're younger and you're building your career, some of the greatest ways to kind of build peer relationships is through organizations and programs like 30 Under 30 or peer-to-peer opportunities, because someone trying to kind of figure out what a marketing coordinator needs to be doing in Austin is probably pretty similar to what it needs to be doing in Savannah or any other city. And so even to pick up the phone and call somebody that maybe you don't know but has a similar title and position in another town is an okay thing to do, to kind of bounce ideas and get input from each other. So those are just a couple of kind of key things for me that I think it's key for people to kind of have those good peer-to-peer relationships.
Awesome. Thank you, Margot. What about you, Jeremy?
Sure. I would say I'm going to have Margot mentor me about networking, because I am not comfortable doing networking. I'm a bit of an introvert. I'm a big introvert. And so walking into a reception at a conference and seeing 500 people kind of makes me nervous a little bit. But I do understand the value of it, and I've sort of just forced myself to put myself out there. And one of the tricks I have used over the years is, even in those situations, I will say, I just want to meet 3 people. I don't have to meet everybody. I want to meet 3 and make 3 really good connections. Hopefully they're peers, in terms of what they do, that I can add to my network, and that's been very helpful over the years, to sort of keep the scale down, keep the expectations lower. Sometimes it's worked out where I've met more than 3 people, but sometimes it's less. But that's always been my goal. I use the rule of 3. But I would also say I've had very good experience with the Tourism Geeks Facebook page, for example. Met a lot of people online through that and learned a lot from people. But really, it really allowed me to sort of make that connection in real life when I would see people like, oh yeah, we're in that same group together, and that's been very helpful. I would say it's been better once I've met them in real life to make that personal connection. I do feel more comfortable, reaching out to those people if I've met them in real life. So that may be the introvert talking, but I think there's definitely a value to networking, and I think it's a skill you can learn over time, even if you're not comfortable. But I think using the rule of 3 has served me well over the years.
That's great. Those are some great tips. Thank you both for sharing. So along that topic of networking, where have you found some of your career mentors? Have you discovered a professional relationship that's been particularly valuable? And do you have any tips for staying in touch, like you mentioned, or really what to ask for from a mentor? Margot, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, happy to. As far as mentors go and where have I found those, I have, I think, been quite fortunate to kind of connect with several people that I consider kind of my key mentors and people that I go to for advice about my professional career or key decisions that I make. And those have kind of come along quite surprisingly, I think. Some have been from the actual office where I've worked in the past. Some have been with associations that we're members of, and just by becoming involved in certain areas of that association, just developing really good relationships and trusting relationships. Others have been vendors that have contracted with us at work, and I've just been able to kind of see great value in reaching out and seeking advice from those people. And as far as staying in touch and how do I do that, I try to make a really solid effort to reach out to those few key people and make sure that I'm inviting them to lunch or to breakfast or to meet for drinks after work sometime, just to make sure that I'm doing my part to kind of keep connected to them, because that's one of the key things. You can let some of those relationships kind of ebb and flow, but it's really our responsibility as people that are still wanting to learn and grow in our careers from our mentors. And so it's a great thing, I think, for us to continue to reach out and to keep those relationships going. And I think at times I've had people ask me, can you assign younger people to mentors in the industry? And that's kind of a hard call, because the way that many of them happen often, and some of you have probably experienced, is that it just comes naturally, that you meet someone and you kind of connect and that relationship continues to build over time. But then there are other people that don't have an opportunity, maybe from smaller markets, that haven't had a chance to interact or to be around kind of those key people in your industry that you're interested in learning from. So it's kind of twofold, but the way that mine happened is through just great connections with people.
That's great. Thank you, Margot, for sharing. Jeremy, what about you?
Sure, and Margot has definitely made some excellent points, very valid points that I think people should definitely pay attention to. I think my mentors have sort of happened along the same lines. I've never really been assigned a mentor, but they've just sort of come into my realm, so to speak, through work relationships. One of them was a consultant that we used years ago that we've stayed in touch, and other people that are just older friends that have sort of keep tabs on my career. But I think it's important, what Margot said, is to stay in touch and to make the effort. I think that goes a long way, because you're always going to need a mentor or mentors at some point, but you don't want to be the first time they hear from you in 2 years is when you need some advice. I think you have to invest the time and make the effort to reach out to them, just for no other reason than just to find out what they're up to and give them an update on you. But when you do need advice, or you have a challenge you're trying to find solutions to, then you can ask them. But I think you have to invest the time ahead of time with those people. I've had some great mentors over the years, whether they're former colleagues or bosses, but I would also say that a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be someone older than you. I think I've had some mentors and people I've learned from that have been younger than me, and I certainly, at where I am at sort of the midway point, I have people that I look up to and learn from, both above me and below me. So I wouldn't necessarily not look for mentors who are younger than you, or maybe not necessarily in your what you handle at work. I think you can look at all different kinds of people to gain experience from.
Those are some great points. Thank you both for sharing. So finally, here is another question submitted by one of our 30 under 30 classmates, and it is, how do you weight the value of continuing education, whether it's more traditional, like a master's degree, or is it more of an industry-specific certification? And what would you recommend to someone who is just starting out in the industry to a young professional who maybe has 5+ years under their belt? Jeremy, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. I think it's all, in a general overall sense, I think it's always good to continue to learn, whether it's a formal education or a certification, or even just staying abreast of what's happening in the industry with trends and technology, whatever it may be. I mean, that's sort of our job, to stay on top of these things. And so however you gain knowledge, I think, is important. There's so many resources online too for learning new things that there's endless opportunities. I would say, as far as the traditional education, I have a master's degree, but it's not in a tourism field. It's a history degree, but I've learned a lot, even how to use that degree with my work, because I really view what we do as storytellers, and that's the root word of history is story. How to tell a good story, how to communicate well. Those are all good skills that I think tourism is such a broad field. I think there's a lot of different fields that can help. I don't know if I would have done it in the first 5 years, although it's probably a good time to do it before you have kids and settle down, but because you have other pressures. But I don't necessarily think you have to do it right away. I think you can always go back and do it, and if it works, I think it's a great tool to add to your repertoire. But also too, I think industry groups are a great way to learn too. Industry associations, volunteering for committees, either locally or with national organizations. There's learning opportunities out there everywhere. You just have to keep your eyes open, your mind open.
Thank you. Margot, what about you?
Jeremy, I agree with you. I think as far as continuing ed or industry certification specifically, it depends on the person. It depends on your job. It depends on where you're located in the country and what resources are available to you. I'd say that those certifications and degrees definitely set you apart as a candidate whenever you're looking for a new job, because as a manager, you always look for something kind of above and beyond on somebody's resume to help kind of pull their resume to the top of the list. But I don't have either of those, and so I think it's helpful, but it's not necessary. One of the things that Jeremy pointed out, and I fully support, is it's making sure that you're staying on top of trends, that you are kind of always being a forward thinker in your workplace, becoming a better storyteller than the town next door or one of your competitors in the state. Those are kind of the key things. One of the other areas that I think is important is people continue to grow in their career, and for this group specifically, since most of them are within that 30-year range, is to kind of, if they're interested in kind of leadership and management development, is to look and seek for some leadership and management skill training. One of the things I found in my career is I was promoted because I was good at my programming job and the storytelling part and marketing part, but I didn't really have the tools from a management side on how to talk to people about HR and different things that can be quite sensitive and hard to learn how to talk about. And so one of the things that, looking back at my career, is I wish that I would have probably on my own gone and done some kind of leadership or management training just to help better prepare me for a possible promotion or whatever it may be.
Thank you both for sharing. Those are the questions that we had so far from our 30 under 30s. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mitchell, who has a few more potentially that popped on the call. Mitchell?
Yeah, we have quite a few coming through.
Awesome.
The first question, this one comes from Ben in Mountain View, California. The question is, if you were the top boss, how would you invest in your young staff to keep them involved in the DMO community? Jeremy, you want to start that one?
Sure, that's a great question, Ben. I would say I think what young people on my staff and that I've come across want to do is contribute, and so any chance I can give them a role to manage a project or anything like that, they tend to do very well with that, and it shows that you're invested in them and that you trust them. And so I try to always give that someone can control a little bit, and instead of just doing part of the job, they have a project they own. That's always worked well for me with younger staff.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy.
Sure.
The second question comes from Vanessa, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I do want to read it. She specifically had a question on the skills or professional development that you've taken or recommended taking once you've started your career. I know you've touched on it with industry professionals. I know one of our certifications is the CDME, which can be taken through our convention and meetings. Do you guys have any other specific courses that you've taken? Have you guys taken anything outside of your professional development area, such as going into the accounting or going into something opposite of marketing that you're not used to?
I recently just took a business analysis class, and a lot of that had to do with the company that I'm in now. We're looking for new and kind of innovative revenue streams, and to have kind of an entrepreneurial mindset around that. And one of the things I needed to do was to kind of be better targeted at looking at a potential idea or building a new attraction in one of our parks and really understanding the business side of it, not just the marketing side.
Jeremy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I haven't taken a whole lot of courses. I did take Dale Carnegie at one point, which I thought was very good as far as teaching more soft skills, how to deal with coworkers and your supervisors, and how to be a better, you know, person in the office, you know, because that's where you're going to achieve a lot of success, I think, even individually, is how well you work with your team. So anything that helps develop those soft skills, I think, will serve you well in the long run. And also, to reiterate what Margot had said earlier, you know, leadership training, I think, you know, I sort of moved up over the years because I was good at the current job I was doing, so I got a promotion, which was great, but it you know, what I was being recognized for was not preparing me necessarily for more of a leadership role about, you know, managing people and HR issues and things like that. So I would definitely recommend leadership training even before you're in a leadership position, because you'll be that much more prepared.
Thank you. The third question comes from Jeremy Fairley, a 30 under 30 in the first class and also a former DMEI employee. Jeremy wants to know if there's an academic background that you feel is better acclimated to tourism, specifically working at a DMO. Jeremy?
You know, I certainly don't have a traditional marketing or tourism background as far as my education. I have history degrees, bachelor's and master's, that I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, has served me well, because it's forced me to learn how to write clearly, communicate clearly, you know, make arguments persuasively, tell a good story, you know, most of all. So I think that has been good experience. But there's a number of fields. I think anything, you can find so much that will contribute to a tourism career. I would say the trend going forward, technology or more experience with IT is definitely going to be serve you well, because this world is becoming so much more analytical in terms of technology and the tools. So becoming versed in those avenues, I think, would serve you well in a tourism career as well.
Margot, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, kind of to add on to what he was saying, but really, I mean, my degree is a tourism degree, but there's so many different opportunities because our industry is so diverse, and even the positions within a DMC. I think experience, your skill sets, the attitude of that person have so much to do with it. So it's a pretty broad category of things.
Thank you. Jeremy, we're getting a lot of feedback on the Facebook group that you mentioned during one of your questions. Do you want to touch base? I believe that you were talking about Tourism Geeks. Do you want to touch base on what that is and how you guys communicate?
Sure. Tourism Geeks has been around for several years. I think it was Ann Swoboda that started that years ago, back, gosh, I think may have been 2007, 2008. I don't remember how far back it goes. But it's grown over the years. But it's been a great resource. We share a lot of tips and strategies and RFPs. And anytime someone's doing a new website RFP, they put a call out for there. It's just been a great resource, for connecting with peers and learning about who's doing what and what's working, what's not working. But like I said, I think also from a networking standpoint, I've met so many people in there first online, and then been able to make an easier connection. Like, oh yeah, we were in Geeks together. We're on that conversation about whatever it was. So that's been very helpful and very beneficial. But yeah, I think Tourism Geeks has done very well for me.
And Jeremy, a follow-up to that too. Do you know if that's an open group, or is there a way that people can belong to this group?
It's a closed group, and I don't administer that now, so I'm not for sure. But I think there's a limit of one person per organization on that. So if you have somebody in your organization that's currently on it, you might want to check on that. But it is a closed group, but it has several hundred members now, and it's always, I'm more of a lurker in there. I don't necessarily post a lot, but it's always getting lots of good conversations in there.
Okay, great. And I'm sure anybody could always just send a message from that main page on Facebook as well. Sure. The next question comes from Gabrielle. She wants to know how you feel about the CMP designation. Is it relevant in the sales career for DMOs? Margot?
I'm not going to be able to answer that one just because I don't deal directly with that certification and for the role that I play here. I think Jeremy would be better served.
Yeah, Jeremy, would you like that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't answer that one either. I don't have any experience with that, so I wouldn't want to lead somebody down the wrong path.
Well, personally, from working here in Washington, D.C. and being familiar with the CMP program, I personally do find it's relevant. I know a lot of people that are on our staff that came from a DMO do have it, and what I think it helps you do, it helps you realize the customers that you're looking for. You've gone through that same road. You know how they act, so you're actually taking from your education of what they know, then you're applying it to them in a sales role. So personally, from my standpoint, I do think the CMP is a very valid and useful designation in a sales role at a DMO. The next question is from John. Well, actually, John was replying. He was saying that as a CMP, having the certification has helped him greatly throughout the past 10 years. So he also echoes my sentiments as well. Well, those are the final questions that I have for our panelists. We'd like to thank you guys for joining. We look forward to having more webinars in the upcoming months. Please check our website, www.destinationmarketing.org, as we frequently put up our new events on our event page. Thanks again for joining, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you.